Good evening, friends, and welcome. I am Jeanette Jerzik, National Director of the She Said Project, and I am coming to you live from from a guest bedroom in my house that I've converted into my swanky new home office.
And I'm Carrie Rosso, co-founder of the She Said Project, and I'm coming at you live from my swagger wagon, in my driveway, and in my pink fuzzy robe, because this is the only place where I can be alone.
She Said is a place where women can come together and share stories, to laugh together and sometimes cry together, to be brave and vulnerable together.
What started as a live one-night show has grown into so much more. She Said is a community of women supporting women, and more women. All the women's.
And it takes a community to put together an event like this. We'd like to thank our speakers who will be braving the microphone tonight, even if it is the microphone on their home computer.
And we want to thank you for joining us, because listening to one woman's story is honoring all women's stories.
And we need to thank our sponsor for making this event possible. As you see, I'm now lounging in my gracious drawing room designed by the McGuire Home Collection. Joining us live is Nicole McGuire herself. Hi, Nicole.
Hello, I am Nicole McGuire, founder of the McGuire Home Collection. I am so happy to support the She Said Project as they present this fabulous showcase of women who are daring to be brave and vulnerable by sharing personal stories that will bring us together at a time we have all been feeling so far apart. At the McGuire Home Collection, we strive to empower women to create their best homes, live their best lives, and work in challenging and fulfilling careers. I personally invite you to be my date this evening. The show is about to get started. Come with me.
February 22nd, 2020. Just weeks before we found ourselves facing a global pandemic, the curtain closed on the 6th live That's What She Said show in Champaign, Illinois. The beloved community event has touched the lives of thousands of women through powerful, intimate performances by women you know and love. In 2019, the She Said movement picked up momentum and grew into more communities and reached new audiences through the She Said Project podcast. The mission is simple, exchanging stories, but the results are extraordinary. We have seen the power of women supporting women on stage, in our communities, and in our hearts. As 2020 continues to bring new challenges for us all to face, we strive to be a safe space for women's voices to be heard. We stand together for equality and justice. We celebrate the healthcare workers and each and every woman standing on the front line of the global pandemic. We look forward to businesses reopening and theaters turning their lights back on. But till then, we are going to keep finding ways to share women's stories, because together we are stronger, even when we are apart. Tonight, we are not limited by space and time. Tonight, our community is larger than ever before. Tonight, we present 7 women who will virtually blow you away. Please join us in welcoming your She Said Showcase speakers.
In one moment, my world came crashing down on me. With the words, "I want a separation," everything in my life that I knew had changed. I had been a military wife for 20 years and a mother for 15. I had no idea what to do or where to turn. My entire life was wrapped up in my husband and my 2 beautiful daughters. I had my career, but I only worked part-time in order to care for my family. I had always known that I was destined to take care of people. I am a giver. What I wasn't prepared for was the journey I was about to face, taking care of myself for the first time in 25 years. The first few months were full of unbearable grief. I cried a lot. And when I wasn't crying, I was just trying to survive. I lived day to day and tried to do my regular routine. Take care of my girls, take care of the house, and go to work. I don't know how I was able to do my job as a child and family therapist because I was dealing with divorce and separation with my clients every day. But I suppose it gave me a sense of purpose, so I kept doing it. At that time, I spent a lot of time driving my girls back and forth to their studio for dance. I could only manage to drop them off and then promptly sit in my car and cry. I could not walk into the studio to socialize with any of the other dance moms because I was just too embarrassed. And most of all, every time I talked to someone, I cried. So I isolated myself. I felt empty inside, so I started going to therapy as a patient. My own therapist helped me realize there had been one person I had been neglecting for many, many years, myself. I realized I didn't know who I was, separate from my family or career. I did not have any hobbies or really any friends. Where were all the people that I could fall back on when I needed them the most? Don't get me wrong, I have friends that I have made over the years. But what I now realized is that I lost touch with them because I allowed my family's needs to consume my every hour. So my first goal was to reconnect with people. But I struggled because I did not fit in and I couldn't open up. I felt like no one understood what I was going through. So I looked for support groups and I found an online group in the area for divorced, separated, and single mothers. That's where I made an astonishing discovery. There were other women who felt exactly the same way I did. They felt alone and were trying to develop a new life just like I was. I was slowly getting enough strength to talk more to people. I decided that I needed to reconnect with some old friends. While I was going through some old papers, I found a creative writing assignment that I had written back in high school. I wrote about the group of friends that I would hope to have when I was in college and the person I would be that I would hope to be when I was in college. For me, college was a great time of growth and change. I look back at it with fondness. I had that great group of friends, but I had lost touch with them. So I reached out to a college friend and asked him some questions that had been really nagging me. What was I like when I was in college? Who was I before I was a wife and before I was a mother? How had I lost myself along the way? At this point in my life, I did not know who I was anymore. So I was looking for answers and going back to the people and places from a time when I felt I was truly myself. After talking it out, I decided I had to find that person I was back then and incorporate her back into my life today. My daughters will soon be starting their own college journey, and I hope they can stay true to their authentic selves along the way. In the last 2 years, they have seen my life crumble and seen me with so much self-doubt. So what can I show my girls during this time? The biggest lesson I think I can give them is to pick yourself up when life does not go your way, to rebuild. Over these last couple of years, I have thought a lot about the person I was back in college, who I was and so full of dreams and honesty then. I am tapping into that person again. I have developed the confidence to do more and try more on my own. I have made some career moves towards new and challenging goals for myself. I am more financially independent than I have ever been. I learned how to treat myself to massages and bubble baths. I have even been on a never-ending quest for fitness and health. And even though I am a work in progress, it feels good to be my own person again, like I was back in college. This has been my journey over the last few years, one from utter destruction to rebuilding and reconnecting in my life. Even though it has been a forced journey, I have learned to laugh and enjoy the times with my girls. I know they are watching and learning from how I've been handling everything that has been thrown at me. I got a huge reminder of that this past Mother's Day, when my oldest painted a picture for me with the following words on it. I am strong because a strong woman raised me. Under it was a picture of me and my daughter. I broke down in tears. That's how I want to be remembered. I know I am doing my job, even when I make mistakes or don't know what to do. I keep moving forward. I feel I am dramatically different than I was 2.5 years ago. I am more adventurous, more open, and reconnected to my old self. I'm constantly working on myself, who I am, and who I want to be. I have even managed to start dating and in a relationship full of honesty and respect. I spend time with my girls and cherish the memories. All because the life that I knew crumbled and a new life emerged.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Congratulations.
It was February 27th, 2010. On a random Saturday afternoon at approximately 4 o'clock, my husband of nearly 22 years approached me stating there was something he wanted to discuss with me, but not in front of the children. I was in the kitchen preparing a late afternoon snack for the kids. Earlier that day, we had argued. It was the same argument, the same conversation we've been having for months. The kids, our marriage, our family business, our finances, and our future. I followed Gabe down the hallway, and as soon as we got to our bedroom, he turned to face me, and I realized that there was a foreign object in the front pocket of his hooded sweatshirt. I realized it was a handgun, a .45 caliber H&K. Gabe grabbed me and shoved me into the very back corner of our walk-in closet. I was terrified. I screamed in a way I didn't know I was capable of. Sheer, unintelligible, high-pitched terror. I remember him saying, all of this is going to stop now, and then he fired the gun. The first bullet went through my left foot. In shock, I yelled, "Oh my God, you just shot me." Immediately after, I crumbled to the floor. Everything happened so fast that it took me several seconds to realize that Gabe had fired a nearly fatal second shot that blew out 1.5 inches of my femur and grazed my femoral artery, causing me to collapse. With my face buried in the carpet and my mind reeling from what had just happened, a third bullet entered my right hip and exited my groin. The next thing I heard was the sound of my husband fiddling with the gun, checking the chamber, and I started praying. I was terrified that the next bullet would end up lodged in the back of my head. Instead, he put the gun in his own mouth, fired, and fell to the floor. I lay there, frozen in fear, holding my breath, and then I heard him die. I spent a month in the hospital, a month in a wheelchair. Eventually, I graduated to a walker and a cane. I was weak and fragile, and therefore spent a full year in physical therapy, regaining strength, learning to navigate stairs, and trying to regain some semblance of balance. There were many surprises at his death. He left our family business with over $25 million of debt, a house that was upside down on the mortgage, and he had borrowed against his life insurance, leaving us with very few resources to cover college expenses for our 4 children. For 2 years, I fought to save the business we started together, but it was a lost cause. Bottom line was our business was a house of cards that eventually came tumbling down. In 2012, I decided it was time to pack up and start a life elsewhere, a place where people didn't know my backstory and a place where we could rebuild. For the past 8 years, I've lived in North Dallas, and today I am tremendously thankful and have a very blessed life. For years, I couldn't imagine ever feeling these things, but by just getting out of bed every day, by just showing up, and by just going through the motions to get through each 24-hour period, I eventually started to shift my mindset from victim to survivor, and the shift was transformational. I am happy, I laugh, and there is joy. As I look back, I never thought that this could happen to someone like me. Domestic violence is something that only happens to those people over there. Yet, according to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, 1 in 4 women experience severe intimate partner physical violence. Furthermore, on average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States. And the presence of a gun in a domestic violence situation increases the risk of homicide by 500%. In every corporate position I've had in the last 10 years where I have shared my story with a colleague, I've had a coworker come up to me and say, "This happened to me too." The Institute for Women's Policy Research estimates that the economic impact of intimate partner violence costs the U.S. society $5.8 billion annually in healthcare costs and productivity losses. This is just insane. For goodness sake, it is the year 2020. And don't we know by now that we aren't supposed to hit our wives, let alone shoot them? The biggest travesty for me would be failing to use my story to help other women that deal with the shame, the self-blame, the self-doubt, and the embarrassment that comes with leaving an abusive relationship. I personally believe that we as women do ourselves a disservice by not talking about it. And by not sharing our personal experience of living in an abusive relationship, we live in isolation, falsely believing that we are alone. Yet if it's 1 in 4, it is statistically impossible that I or you are the only one living in this nightmare. Look, everyone goes through crap, and we all live in a world of crazy at some point in our life. So when you get through your crazy, talk to others, share your journey so you can lift up those that may need it the most. For many years, I didn't realize that I was living in an abusive household. It took me getting shot and nearly dying to realize how bad my own situation was. In fact, many times, as was in my case, abusive relationship starts with the softer abuses, such as emotional and financial abuse. The physical piece doesn't manifest until much later, when the perpetrator can no longer manipulate and control their partner by the softer infractions. I've questioned many times why I lived over the past decade. Only our Maker knows the answer to that. People die every day from injuries far less severe than what I went through. And in recent years, this really hit me hard. And I have learned that it is so important that we cherish each and every day we have here on this earth. In closing, if any of this spoke to you, I challenge you to the following. Shed the victim mentality and pivot to think like a survivor. Stop being ashamed of your past and reach out to others who might benefit from hearing about your journey. Live each day to the fullest, because tomorrow is never guaranteed. And finally, perhaps the biggest lesson that I have learned through this journey is that success is not defined by what you have achieved, but instead by what you have overcome. Thank you.
It was a cold February night. Snowy roads, hat, scarf, and gloves were a must. I'd finished a long day at work and continued my evening of meetings for community service with my sorority sisters. I caught my second wind and freshened up to walk into this meeting with focus, intent, and purpose, so I could be home by 10 o'clock. Oh, and by the way, did I mention it was my 31st birthday? Now, my birthday had become less of a big deal the older I'd gotten, and more of a day of gratitude and reflection. And let's be honest, my friends and family from the South had no desire to come anywhere near Chicago in February. 90% of the time, my birthday is the day of, the day before, or the day after the Super Bowl. So I've always enjoyed the residual fun of other people's Super Bowl parties and the halftime show in some years. Shout out to Beyonce 2016 and Prince 2007. I was laying out paperwork and handing out the agenda so I could be home by 10 o'clock. As I laid out a ton of paperwork on the table and reviewed those directions on how we were going to be effective and efficient, I had my game face on with focus, intent, and purpose. I was feeling good, and then I noticed some of the ladies looking a bit distracted and mischievous. So I'm nosy, trying to figure out exactly what is going on. Lo and behold, someone was walking in my periphery with a birthday cake. Oh, wow. Are they doing what I think they're doing? It was my birthday. I was totally caught off guard and a bit annoyed because a birthday cake was not on the agenda. And let's be clear, everything runs by the agenda. But as a Southern belle, I smiled, listened to everyone inhale a breath so big to perform this birthday song, somewhere between Stevie Wonder and 50 Cent. By this time, the cake was sitting right in front of me, smile still in place, and the mock choir ready to go. In my mind, I was calculating the time it will take to cut the cake, eat the cake, and clean up, all of which was not on the agenda. Until this point, I spent most of my adult birthdays at TGI Fridays with a free brownie, several appetizers, and a few cocktails. Was there a candle? Who knows? Did they sing? Quite possibly. But this right here, this whole experience was just feeling so weird and foreign to me. Here they go. Happy birthday. And then in the spirit of moving my agenda along, I blew out those candles. Right then and there, yes, I did. All of a sudden, I noticed some looks, and now the choir started sounding like Stevie Not Wonder and 49 Cent. What happened? What changed? Why all of these looks? So the ladies mustered their way to the end of the song, and I was just so curious, why was everyone staring at me in such disbelief? We were at the end of the song and the energy was just awkward. Then finally, one of the older ladies just came out and said it. Have you never had a birthday cake? You blew out the candles before we finished the song. What was that all about? I simply replied, I didn't know I was supposed to wait until the end to blow out the candles. Now you may ask, how was that possible? How did you not know? To explain that, we have to go back 5 years to my 5-year-old birthday party at McDonald's. My last memories of a formal birthday party. I had a beautiful ABC dress on and all my classmates were in attendance. That was the only major birthday party I'd had, and I'm pretty sure my mother cued me on when to blow out those candles and to be camera ready at the same time. To understand why there was a 26-year gap between these two parties requires you to know a little bit more about me. As a kid, I was an old soul. I had no interest in playing outside or with other children or with dolls. I had things to do, places to go, and people to see. I was on a mission with focus, intent, and purpose. While others were playing Candyland, hopscotch, and Miss Mary Matt, I was at tap, jazz, ballet, gymnastics, and piano, all by my choosing. I was so bored at school, they moved me up a reading grade level. I was indeed an old soul. I knew what people thought about me. A little Black girl from a small Southern town with limited opportunities and even lower aspirations. I was interested in pursuing my dreams and proving everyone wrong rather than blowing out candles and making wishes. Now, do I feel bad about blowing those candles before I even made a wish? Not really. Do I wonder about the wish I lost out on? Possibly. I think it's okay to be different. I eat dessert first. I wear flip-flops until there is snow on the ground. I drive barefoot. But that lost wish, what would I wish for? A promotion, a new purse, maybe even a husband. But here are 3 reasons why I do not dwell on that lost wish. First, time has passed, and time waits for no one. I was supposed to blow out those candles precisely when I did. It's been a conversation piece and a source of laughter amongst my friends ever since. And laughter is good for the soul. And lastly, my future is waiting with all new wishes. Why do I need to wait for my next birthday to make a wish? Every day I wake up is a new wish. And I certainly don't need a candle to make it come true.
I have rights. Say it. I have rights.
Rights.
Right.
I have rights.
I have rights.
Yes, this is what my Nana would demand of me when I was a little girl. I have the right to vote. I have the right to hold property. I have the right to fair and equal credit. I have rights, a lot of them. My grandmother used to say this to me all the time. She lived through a time when women were not afforded all those rights. She would make me repeat after her different rights, just to show me how many I had, from unalienable rights to rights afforded under warranties. I have the right to return this faulty toaster. I knew she was going to get really fired up about something when I'd hear her mutter under her breath, I have rights. I have rights. That meant the person on the other end of the phone was about to get an education in fine print. Their fine print. Health insurance, banks, billing departments, businesses, she read it all. No one was safe if they weren't honoring the fine print in their contract. And I loved it. I used to listen in. I saw the power in the fine print. When I was 19, my sociology professor required us to write a contract that said, I read the syllabus, I agree to the dates that the work is due, and I am aware of your attendance policy. Both the student and the professor would then sign the contract to make it real. He said this was to teach us how the real world works. I thought this was great. Nana taught me all about contracts. It was going to be very clear what was expected from us, with no surprises at the end of the semester. So I sit down to type up my contract, and I get to the section of the syllabus about attendance. This man had a punitive attendance policy that for every 3 classes you missed, he would drop you a full grade point. Meanwhile, our grade was based on turning in papers. We didn't have one single in-class presentation. So if I got A's on all my papers, but missed 3 classes, I'm gonna get a B? Oh, no. I was on an academic scholarship. There was no way that this attendance policy was gonna mess with my scholarship. Now, I went to college in the frozen tundra that is upstate New York. I knew that it was going to snow, like a lot, and I was gonna miss class. what would Nana do? And it was here that I remembered dealing with an issue at the student radio station. A famous DJ who was booked for a campus event didn't show up because there was a blizzard, and he still sent an invoice. Well, I got my hands on that contract, and sure enough, there was a force majeure clause in there that says, in the event of an act of God, i.e. the blizzard, he would still be paid even if he didn't perform. The person that hired the DJ didn't read the contract before signing, and the radio station still had to pay. I have rights. So I wrote in a force majeure clause into my contract that said, should I miss any classes due to inclement weather, as long as I notified the professor in advance of class, his attendance policy would be waived. I printed it, signed it, and dropped it off for my professor to sign, which he did. No notes, no cross-throughs, nothing. So I waited until after class and I said, so everything's okay with my contract? I signed it, you're all set. Oh, okay, so you read it. I signed it, you're all set. Okay, great, thanks. At the end of the semester, I met with my professor and we're reviewing all of my work, all 8 papers. And he's going on and on about how great my work was, how I showed such an impressive grasp of the material. If only I had attended all of the classes, I would have gotten an A in his class. He's so sad that he has to dock my grade, but that's the contract we signed. Pardon me, but I didn't have any absences that fall outside of the force majeure clause. I directed his attention to our contract. He jumps up from his desk and explodes at me. You are invoking an act of God clause? Well, I was pretty shocked at the level of anger being directed towards me by the same person that had just told me how great my work was the minute before. And there was a split second where I thought to myself, is he going to fail me? Because he's the professor and he has all of the power in this relationship and I've made him so angry? No, I have rights. We have a signed contract. I am in control here. So I took a deep breath and calmly said, yes, you'll see right there, I specifically mention inclement weather, and you will see here that I emailed in advance as per our contract. He was fuming. I got my A. I called my Nana. Hey, Nana, I have rights. That moment, that win over authority on the fine print, whew, on the fine print, the power. Whew. That same power helped me earn the respect of CEOs and general counsels while I was still in my early 20s. That same power has enabled me to negotiate huge deals and structure international companies. In the face of authority, confidence is critical. And while it helps me to know I'm right, that's not always enough to win the battle. It is the power of the fine print that both defends me and gives me the upper hand. Now, I know, the fine print can make us feel powerless. The sheer volume of it, the waves of legalese, the sign it or else attitude of whoever presents it. Tech companies use it to harvest our data. Banks use it to harvest fees and interest. But if I am ever feeling overwhelmed, I take a deep breath and I remind myself, I have rights and they are in the fine print.
Awesome.
At 53, I found myself at a place in life where I'm happy, healthy, and living life on my own terms. For the most part, I'm in touch with my feelings and have figured out that I'm responsible for and I'm in control of my own well-being. I wish I could say that I've always been confident enough to live life on my own terms and to stay in pursuit of my own joy, but that has not always been the case. I truly believe that we're a product of our own experiences and that sometimes you have to face struggles to gain wisdom. Like most people, I've had my share of struggles and now realize that in a lot of ways, I was my own problem. I let harmful, negative emotions combined with a natural desire to fight and win conquer me. The result? A 40-year struggle with my weight and dealing with mental health issues. I was at my heaviest in 2014, weighing in at 280 pounds and had nervous breakdowns at ages 30, 38, and 46. So where did things go wrong for me? Puberty? Well, elementary school to be more specific. From 1973 to 1985, my family lived in a western suburb of Chicago and was the only Black family in our neighborhood. The only other Black kids in school with me were my younger brother and sister. And when I got to junior high, I was the only one in the entire school. Our welcome to the neighborhood gift was a firebomb to try and burn our house down. Being young at the time, I was pretty oblivious to what happened, but do recall it being a major issue for my parents and my older siblings. That event set the stage for the us versus them debates that took place within my home. 3rd grade, I got my first taste of being a direct target. I think the first day of school was the first time that I had ever heard anybody use the word nigger, and they were using it towards me. Some of the boys greeted me on my first day of school with this word. That was the first time that it occurred to me that I was different from everyone else. And it probably put me on the path to developing my own insecurities and my personal conflict between wanting to be liked and wanting to be invisible. I started 3rd grade as an outgoing, confident, fearless, adventurous, self-assured, happy kid that believed to know me is to love me. But by the time 8th grade ended, I was far less outgoing, far less confident and self-assured. And for fear of disappointment, I just stopped looking forward to things. I wasn't afraid to stand up for myself when someone tried to bully me, but having to fight to command the respect that my white classmates were automatically given took an emotional toll on me that I wouldn't come to understand until much later in life. In elementary school, despite how hard I tried, the only grade that I ever received was satisfactory. Even though I knew for a fact that my work often deserved a grade of excellent, it was never given. After so many times of being told, you are not excellent, you start to believe it. I didn't understand it at the time, but now I realize that I was a victim of racial bias. There were teachers that believed that Black people were less intelligent than white people and not deserving of accolades. It may not have been done intentionally, but it was a blow to my self-confidence and caused me not to like school. I'm the middle of 5 children. As a typical middle child, I was the one that my parents didn't have to worry about. I avoided trouble, I was obedient, I didn't ask for much. I shared the things with my family that I knew that they would appreciate, but generally kept my mistakes, insecurities, and feelings to myself. Puberty was rough for me. Between 7th and 9th grade, I gained 60 pounds and grew 5.5 inches. I was already dealing with some self-esteem challenges in school, but now I had to deal with my siblings calling me things like fat pig. Body shaming caused me to see myself as fat, and I've struggled with my weight ever since. Looking back, I can see how that happy, self-assured, fearless, and outgoing girl started to fade. My freshman year of college ended with a huge betrayal that put me in a compromising position where I feared that I was going to be raped. Between that experience and learning of some gossip that was being said about me, I was a wreck. I was devastated, embarrassed, filled with anger, guilt, and shame. And for a long time, I gave power to that shame and guilt. I allowed it to weigh heavily on me and convinced myself that I wasn't worthy of love and to expect disappointment. Fast forward to me at 30. I had no balance in my life. I was overworked, undervalued, had no separation between friends, family, and work, felt criticized, unsupported, and unappreciated on all levels, and ended up having a nervous breakdown. I spent all my time trying to make everyone around me happy, and all at once, it just became too much and I couldn't handle it anymore. My life flashed before my eyes, and every single pain that I had ever swept under the rug resurfaced. It was the worst single moment of my life. But it was a catalyst to me finally paying attention. I started to understand the dangers of negativity, isolation, burying my feelings, and not being true to self. I wish I could say that I learned everything that I needed to know in that first episode, but I didn't. Third time's a charm for me. I now understand that negativity is my kryptonite. The fear of failure and disappointing the people that I care about drives me to put way too much pressure on myself. 6 years ago, I decided to put myself first. For the first time in my life, I woke up one morning and I didn't like what I saw in the mirror. I realized that there was a beautiful woman with a great body under the layers of fat my body was holding. I took a year off of work. I made a decision to have bariatric surgery to jumpstart my weight loss. And within 9 months of having that surgery, I lost 140 pounds. I made big changes in my career. I gave up the big job. I became an independent consultant, and I only take on assignments that I enjoy and that allow me the flexibility to travel and explore the world. I still have some body image issues, and occasionally I eat my feelings, but I'm aware. I no longer suffer in silence. I realize that there's power in vulnerability. I live out loud, and I'm proud to share my truths. Knowledge is power, and sharing is caring.
Hey.
There is something really amazing about listening to other women's stories.
Agree. It always makes you reflect on the time in your life when you went through something similar or helps you learn about yourself through these experiences.
And each of these women have shared something intimate and inspiring, things we can all relate to. I have also struggled with depression and let it affect my weight and my health.
I think that's one of those topics just about every woman can relate to because it's complicated.
Yes. When I think about the moments in my life when my weight fluctuates the most, those times usually centered around sad, depressive periods. I remember the first time I lost a significant amount of weight quickly. At the age of 25, I experienced a serious heartbreak for the first time. Girl, I was in love one day and heartbroken the next. It was a complete shock to my system. I did not know how to deal with it or even get through it. My daily routine changed, and it did not include eating. I would go to work, come home, sleep on the living room floor, and listen to The Emancipation of Mimi on repeat. That is really when Mariah Carey and I became best friends. Her music saved my life.
Girl, I can just picture you there laying on the floor, drowning in Mariah's music. I totally get it.
Girl, reflecting now on that moment, I realized how sad I really was. One day I was at work and I started to cry and I could not stop the tears. So I immediately picked up the phone and scheduled an appointment with a therapist.
For you.
I went into my boss's office to let her know I had an emergency therapy appointment and shared my story with her. She was so comforting. And after that experience, I find that I can turn to therapy when things get hard.
You're not alone, Denise. Managing a healthy weight has always been such a battle for me. And I also remember a specific instance involving a really awful breakup. Why do we let these things destroy us so much?
I don't know.
I was 100% positive I would marry this guy. And then the path my life took was something I never expected. I also never expected for a person to have so much control over my emotional well-being. In the moment, I never realized how depressed I was. And it even got to a point that I tossed around the idea of taking my life.
Girl, that is complicated, and I have also had similar thoughts.
So I started running. I used running to cope with these dark thoughts, with the emotions I was dealing with. Most importantly, running was my space to process every little detail and conversation from the last few months of the relationship. I ran in the mornings before starting my day, at night with the goal to make my body so tired that falling asleep would become easy versus staying up thinking about, what did I do wrong? My relationship with food was normal, but because I ran so much, people started noticing how thin I was getting. I wish I had discovered therapy then, because I didn't gain the tools I needed to deal with stress until later for myself. So later in my early 30s, I developed some unhealthy habits of stress eating and started gaining weight. And I've been able to get my unhealthy coping mechanism under control.
So tell me, why do we as women keep this stuff inside and not talk about it in a healthy way? How can we normalize these experiences and find ways for women to talk about them more? It was years later before I chose to go to therapy again. A few years ago, I had 3 family members who died within a couple of weeks of each other.
Wow.
One was an unexpected death of a sibling, and another was my grandmother who lived to be 103.
Wow.
That was also the year before I turned 40 and the beginning of my midlife crisis, which is a real thing. Life expectancy was on my mind often. And I wanted to live the second half of my life differently, but with more risk. I sought therapy once again to help me find the motivation and the courage to do so. During that time, I took a leap of faith and left the only career I had known and followed a professional journey that is more true to my natural abilities. And I made decisions that were focused on me.
Good for you.
Thank you. Now, if I can figure out how to add a spicy romance back into my life, that would be a bonus.
Girl, do you really want to talk about dating? Because it's complicated, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So when I first moved to Champaign about 10 years ago, my dating life was fantastic. Listen, I had lots and lots and lots of fun. But for some reason, during the beginning of me finding myself again, I've not been able to date the same. Nothing really sticks, and I'm not even picky. While my preference is and will always be Black men, I will give pretty much anyone at least one chance. So over the years, I've dated tall, short, skinny, fat, old, a little young, ugly, gorgeous, Black, white, Turkish, Italian. Now we're going international, okay? The list can seriously go on.
Well, before that serious relationship of mine, most of my dating was in college. I went to a predominantly white institution of about 12,000 students. What that meant is that my freshman class at times felt more like high school. If you identified as a person of color, all the other students of color, even if it wasn't on a personal level, knew each other. What it also meant was that most of the time when I was out at bars or clubs, the typical pickup line from a guy was, I bet you can guess, would be, are you an athlete? What position on the soccer team do you play? As if that seemed to be the only reason someone that looked like me was there. What it also meant was that while I was surrounded by mainly white guys, they never really asked me out or approached me. I was told by one of my high school best friends that I was too intimidating for them to approach. Can you believe that?
Yes, I can believe that because you are intimidating.
Dating was just complicated at the time. Dating is still complicated, as I never imagined to be 32 and single.
Well, this is why having girlfriends is important. We need to stick together and be open and honest with each other about these things that we all deal with and wonder about.
Absolutely. And that is why we decided to come together and host some of these complicated conversations on our new podcast, The Complicated DM.
Because the only way we're going to do our part to make it okay for women to be comfortable talking about these topics is by normalizing them, talking about them. It's complicated, but we got this.
We got this.